We heard so many ads about HIV/AIDS and protect
Yep.
yourself. If
Yep.
it's not on, it's not
The
in.
ABC.
Shewakonoso and all of those
Yep.
things.
Yep.
And
Could be right.
nowadays, you hardly hear these.
Gone.
People are silent on it, but it's still prevalent.
We become numb, unfortunately, to the HIV messaging. And when I saw the statistics, the top 10, and I saw HIV/AIDS at number 4, then I said, oh no. What we see, sometimes because I'm a healthcare professional and I'm always in that disease environment, if you like, sometimes you lose sight. You think, oh, maybe because you are in this environment, that's why you're seeing a lot more of it. But just talking to the folks my colleagues at the Ghana AIDS Commission, they are worried about the numbers that we still have in our part of the world and the distribution of the numbers as well. So, Kwame, what is HIV/AIDS? It is an immunosuppressive condition, meaning caused by a virus. This virus will take down your immune system. And your immune system is that very elaborate system of cells, antibodies that protect you from illness. So imagine having a nice big house, furnished, you have all the gadgets in there, but you don't have a lock. And then you come to work here and enjoy FM. I mean, your mind would never be at peace because you think that, oh, okay, by the time you go back, people would have entered. That's what having an immunosuppressive condition like HIV, when your immune system is taken down, that is exactly what happens. You are not protected and you succumb to all manner of infections. So the reason why HIV is such a bad disease or bad virus is that it's not going to kill you directly, but it's going to let others do the job. It just takes everything down, and then you are getting fungal infections, you are getting boils all over the place, you're getting brain infections, you're getting kidney problems, your bone marrow is no longer producing enough blood. So it's a very terrible thing to happen when your immune system is suppressed. So Kwame, let's remind ourselves, since 1980s when we first discovered the virus, we've understood its transmission. Today we are battling another virus. It's called the coronavirus. But then this one is the HIV virus, or the HI virus, or the HIV. Well, it is largely or by and large transmitted sexually, but then body fluids, as we call them. So you can get it through blood transfusions as well. So when we say sexually, it is because you are exchanging semen and then also vaginal fluid, by and large. That's it. Saliva as a means of transmission has not been scientifically proven, so saliva alone. But the mouth is not only saliva that you have. Sometimes you have a lot of bruising in our mouths, and therefore you can get some blood in your mouth as well. Sometimes you brush in the morning and then you find specks of blood when you spit out. So although we are not saying that saliva is a known body fluid, if the mouth is an unsafe area, when we talk about safe sexual practices, then we would not agree that oral sex would constitute a safe sexual practice. We'll think it is unsafe precisely because you may have some broken blood vessels in your mouth. So sexual intercourse primarily, blood transfusions with contaminated blood. These days, because of the National Blood Transfusion Service of Ghana, blood is by and large very, very safe in Ghana because it is taken through, if you get blood the correct way through the National Blood Transfusion Service, then they do a lot of screening to make sure that it is free of HIV and other infections like hepatitis B and then hepatitis C. Then sharing of needles and sharps, for example. So the drug, those who substance use abusers, yes, they also succumb to it because they share one needle. Unfortunately, as healthcare professionals, then we're also at risk because Kwame, we have to treat patients who have HIV, and sometimes, I've done surgeries, cesarean sections on people with mothers who are HIV positive, and unfortunately, and Kwame, your hand is in blood. Your gloved hand, it's in blood and all of that.
Wow.
Unfortunately, sometimes you get a needle stick injury. Paniani to me wall, as you are stitching the person up, and it's an accident, but that's unfortunately the risk that we take. So healthcare professionals are at an increased risk. The medical laboratory scientists who have to take blood samples all the time. Kwame, if you are taking 20, 30 samples a day, multiplied by 10 years of being on the job, you will get a needle stick injury no matter how careful you are. That's the experience I have working almost 16 years. You will have a needle stick injury. So it is a risk that we take. So a very analytic, if you like, and all of that. These things have variable efficacies in terms of removing it from that surface. How long do they put it in for example, before they deem it clean of it? What was the viral load that was on it from the person that you took it? And then if you put it in for 10 minutes, would it clear all of the viral load? I think those are some of the things. So to be on the safe side, I've had my own hair clipper since, I don't know, for the last 15, 20 years maybe. So I don't share. My children go to the salon, the boys, they have their own, as well. So just to be on the safe side, I think you should get your own. Then I think we should go back to the safe sex practices again. The
ABC?
The ABC thing. As for the A.
So the A what?
And then the B cry too.
Just say, when you A, ni B na B o.
Let's start from C and let's work our way to A. I think we'll do reverse psychology.
Reverse.
CBA. Let's do CBA first. And I know maybe the religious folks or the conservative folks are cringing at this, but you see, that's the reality that we face as healthcare professionals. The teenagers, and then even the young adults. So many people, they come and then they will share stories with you. The number of people who come with unplanned pregnancies. How do you get pregnant except you are having unprotected sex? So these are the realities that are on the ground. So should we provide condoms, and should we teach people how to use the condoms properly? So we will look at all of those things. And I would make the point again, oral sex is not a safe sexual practice. Okay. You can't get HIV through oral sex, and you can get all other types of STIs through oral sex as well. These days, people want to avoid pregnancy, and then they are doing anal sex. There's a study that looked at virgins amongst the Islamic community, and the prevalence of those who have engaged in anal sex was very, very high, because for them, they want to avoid being pregnant, so they are using the other route as well. But that also, there's an increased risk of getting HIV from that route. So the voluntary testing and counseling is counseling and testing rather is also something that we encourage, and we preach a lot of it. Pregnant women have something we call the PMTC, prevention of mother-to-child transmission. So if you are a pregnant mother, we've got this protocol we'll take you through to prevent you transmitting HIV to your unborn child. The government has worked very, very hard in making treatment for HIV available to a lot of Ghanaians. So treatment is by and large free in a lot of centers. This year, Medical's got accredited as an HIV treatment center by the AIDS Commission. So we've got some of our staff who are specially trained to handle people with HIV.
Good stuff.
And the stigmatization is also something that I will appeal against. It can be you, can be me. I suffer a lot of needle stick injuries. I pray every day when I have to go to work. And there's no need to stigmatize anybody. Sex is not the only way by which you get HIV. Right. So Kwame, that's where I'll end the conversation about HIV, and then we'll go to number 5.
Which is stroke.
Stroke.
And we've heard a lot about it. We've seen a lot of people who have suffered it.
Yes, but people have a lot of misconceptions about a stroke. So Kwame, what's a stroke? A stroke is a medical emergency that occurs when there is an interruption in blood flow to the brain.
Okay.
All right, so blood is that liquid that supplies us with oxygen and other nutrients for life. So when the brain cells have reduced blood flow or total loss of blood flow, then you deprive them of oxygen, and then you deprive them of other nutrients as well. And then they begin to die or they get injured severely. The brain cells do not tolerate a lack of oxygen very well. Within a short period of poor oxygen supply or total loss of oxygen supply to their brain cells, they are damaged irreversibly. So it is a medical emergency. And if you look at in America, they've set certain standards that from the time you hit the door to the time a diagnosis is made and treatment is started, they've set a limit of a time of 60 minutes. Yes. And in that 60 minutes, you would have had a CT scan of the brain done. All in that 60 minutes. You hit the door, you see a doctor makes a presumptive diagnosis of a stroke. You get a CT scan, therapy is started, 60 minutes. That's the standard. How many CT scan centers do we have in this country? We are blessed with quite a number in the greater Accra region, or a certain radius from Kolebu, I should say, not the greater Accra region, that's stretching it. Accra. Yes. Within a certain radius from, Kolebu 37, those places. But then the moment you go beyond, right? So in the Eastern region, for example, apart from the Eastern Regional Hospital, then you're not getting a CT scan center anywhere. So that timeline of 60 minutes, getting a CT scan done and getting an interpretation, the report, which is supposed to be done by a specialist doctor called a radiologist, because we don't have enough of them here, it is a big problem. There are two types of stroke. One where you get an occlusion of the blood vessel, where blood flow is interrupted because the inside of the blood vessel taking blood to the brain is blocked, either totally or partially. And then you have what we call, so that one we call it the occlusive stroke.
Isn't this similar to the ischemic?
Kwame, you are looking sharp these days.
Oh my goodness.
Is it the NSF?
Yeah. Prosec there, we be sharp, we shall break.
You're looking sharp. I like it. So that's what we call the ischemic stroke.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
The ischemic stroke. So ischemia, occlusion, no blood supply or reduced blood supply. Then you've got the other one, which we call the hemorrhagic stroke. Hemorrhage, meaning blood. So the best pipe, we've all seen Ghana water pipes burst and then pumping blood into the street all the time. And it leaks for hours and hours. And that's always the analogy I try to use. So most of the time, as a result of some weakness in the blood vessel wall or a very high blood pressure that is exerted on the wall, it bursts. Not pipe. So those who walk around with very, very high uncontrolled blood pressure, that is the risk that they take. If you are listening to me and your blood pressure is uncontrollably high, and most of them, they know it. They get headaches, they get dizziness, and so on and so forth. Then you are taking a big risk, because that's just like walking through a minefield. You step on it and boom. And then you bleed into the substance of the brain. And that is the hemorrhagic stroke.
Wow.
Right. So you may have a sudden explosion, or you may, when it is being occluded, the occlusive one or the ischemic one, sometimes there's something we call stroke in evolution. It happens on almost like a slow motion thing. You don't want what the football is called the goal, then we're all waiting for the replay, the slow motion, so they can appreciate it. So Kwame, sometimes you can have a slow motion type of stroke happening. What do you notice? You may have trouble speaking or understanding what others are saying. So if all of a sudden I'm talking to you right now, how am I not speaking clearly? Right? What I just demonstrated now.
Yeah.
Trouble speaking or understanding what somebody is saying to you, you may be having a stroke. If you begin to have weakness in one half of your body, meaning you have difficulty holding a set of keys or lifting your arm on the right, and at the same time you have those same symptoms in your leg or lower limb on that side, then you may be also having a stroke. If you have problems seeing in one or both eyes suddenly, you may be having a stroke. If you have severe headaches, worry para 2B still, the headaches are there, you may be having a stroke. If you have trouble walking, all of a sudden you have to be dragging your feet, you may be having a stroke, right? So there are things that when you go, so if you have any of these symptoms, look, Kwame, don't delay. Call your doctor or go to the nearest possible hospital. That's it.
You know, I'm just thinking about the first one that you described, well, the second one that you described, where it ruptures.
Yeah.
Like
the hemorrhagic stroke.
The hemorrhagic one.
It bursts.
It just bursts like
Yes.
that. I'm wondering what kind of intervention there is.
Well, Kwame, the intervention really is that you have to get your blood pressure under control.
That's pre.
Yes. You know, because if you burst a big one, then you're done. Really. Because you bleed a lot into the brain, and the timelines that we are talking about for intervention, unfortunately, doesn't really exist in our part of the world. You know, so bravo when they brought all those ambulances into the country, because it tries to cut down on some of these things. It allows us to deal with some of these things as an emergency. So a stroke is a medical emergency. But the point is that somebody needs to make a diagnosis first. You need to reach hospital. Can you call an ambulance from the house? No. It's not possible. How many people have done that? I'll be happy for people to call us and say, oh, okay, I called the ambulance line and then an ambulance came to pick me from my home. God, we have huge problems when we have to call ambulances from the hospital to send people to Kolebu. Then when you get to the hospital, you need to be seen immediately, no queuing up. So within hospitals, do we have accident and emergency rooms that are proper accident and emergency rooms? Not trying. Unless near chewing gum or something, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, and then a proper diagnosis needs to be made. How are you going to get a CT scan? And you need a CT scan, the imaging, to be able to make a distinction between the ischemic stroke and then the hemorrhagic stroke.
Okay.
All right, because the interventions are different, right? So the CT scans are not available. So am I trying to paint a hopeless situation for most parts of the country? Absolutely yes. So I look for what I can do. The interventions are that if you suffer high blood pressure, if you are diabetic, and these are some of the risk factors. And Kwame, I think I shared a study with you that looked at older Ghanaian population. The average age was, I think, 62 years. And they looked at the prevalence of stroke and the correlates of stroke in that age group. And what did we find? The prevalence of stroke was about 2.6% in that age group.
Yes.
And then they found out that the odds of getting a stroke are higher if you were what? Single or divorced.
Marital status, level of education.
Status, yes.
Employment
so those who
status.
are divorced or separated, they have your odds are higher. Okay, so Kwame, congratulations. You just reduced your odds.
I just reduced my odds.
So please, those who are married, stay married.
Yeah.
If you divorce, then you increase your risk. Kwame, what was the other thing? I think employment status.
Having primary and secondary education.
Education increases your risk.
Being unemployed.
Being unemployed also increases your risk.
Yes, and living with hypertension and diabetes.
Exactly.
Significantly increase the odds of stroke prevalence in this population. Yeah.
So those are the things. So Kwame, let's not think about what are we going to do if the thing bursts.
Yeah.
What are the things we can do to prevent it from bursting?
Yeah.
Get your diabetes under control. See doctors halfway in the team if you haven't seen them this year. Get your blood pressure under control. Generally stay healthy.
Just stay
exercise
healthy.
regularly. Get your cholesterol under control.
Okay.
So Kwame, these are some of the things. But please, the early signs and symptoms, let's take note of it and then just go to the hospital or go to a doctor.
You know, when you talked about getting to the hospital and the emergency protocols, you know, whether the nurse will say whatever it is, you know, it just reminded me of a story. I mean, it's unrelated, but I'll share with you.
Right.
I was playing basketball with a cousin a few years back, and he broke a leg.
Ouch.
So he twisted an ankle, and I think a few bones were broken. So we kind of tied it to wood. You know, I drove like helicopter,
right.
you know, like sped to the hospital because I'm thinking it's a broken leg, it's an emergency. So I got to the hospital, got him in, you know, it's an emergency. Excuse me, emergency. I got there, and then this doctor comes out, you know, because they said, oh, the emergency comes out. I said, what's wrong with him? I said, doctor, he just broke a leg. You know, his leg is hanging. It's broken. He said, oh, but this is not an emergency. I was like,
You just burst your bubble.
You know, this guy is
Yeah.
in pain.
Pain.
I am wondering what's going on.
Oh,
Is
that's
that-
a bujamba.
now wait.
I be blood
Oh,
local.
but this is not an emergency.
No.
They are man into now. Man, that day I was like, what? Are you serious? No. This is maybe emergency. Make you relax. Make you relax.
Maybe there are some stroke victims. Quite well. If there are some stroke victims, as for your broken ankle, it will heal. We'll give you some Petidine and some tramadol,
Yeah.
and then you just relax for us. But a stroke is a real big emergency,
Yeah.
and we need to all be aware of the risk factors.
Good stuff. I would have
All
loved
the top 10.
All the top 10.
And then we'll do an open clinic.
Hospital